Greetings, peons. It is I, the great legate Burus Ruticus. So, we just had our first weekend of BRO for premium format, and we got to see a whole bunch of decks, both old and new, make their way into the meta. It was a grand old time, and we got to see a bunch of really interesting results. But we're not talking about that today, that's what the podcast is for. Instead, we're going to be talking about Overtriggers. Again. As expected, Overtriggers played a big part in this year's BRO. I'm sure if you looked at tournament reports online, at least one match probably had an Overtrigger involved in it. Naturally, this has spawned a lot of discourse around the Overtrigger, and by discourse I mean everyone calling for it to be banned already. We are all just sick of it. Players are sick of it, judges are sick of it, viewers and commentators are sick of it. We are all just done. So, let's quickly recap why the Overtrigger is such a huge problem for the game. The answer is everything about them, but let's try and break that down a bit more. Point number 1, the power gain. 100 million power is absolutely ridiculous. It is completely unparalleled, nothing comes even close to it. It is such an insane level of power that it might as well just be an infinity sign for all intents and purposes. This insane level of power just shuts down the majority of defensive options in the game. If you're not one of the lucky decks that has a Denial Griffin combo, the only universal answers to the Overtrigger are Perfect Guards and, if it's early enough in the game, Heal Guardians -2 crit, maybe, depends on the Overtrigger. And if you take the Overtrigger on damage, that just ends most turns right then and there, unless the other player also gets an Overtrigger. It's very fun when you're doing everything right, you have control of the game, you're setting up for your big wombo combo, and then the first damage your opponent takes is the Overtrigger, and you're just like, alright, cool, swing impotently with my Vanguard for drive checks, and then pass turn. This leads into the next problem with Overtriggers, which is that their shield value just doesn't match their trigger value. They're only worth 50,000 shield in your hand, which, don't get me wrong, that's still a lot, that's bigger than most G-guards can get, but it's nowhere close to 100 million. This means that, unless you're exactly OTT with the Happiness Dragon, drawing the Overtrigger gives you less value than checking it. Some people have proposed changing the power gain on the Overtrigger to either be 50,000 to match the shield value, or just straight up 10,000 to match all other triggers, but that doesn't address the other problem, which is that the extra effects on the Overtrigger are also ridiculous and can absolutely swing games. Just a reminder that the effects of the Overtriggers are restanding the Vanguard, giving your Vanguard 10k in a crit for the rest of the game, giving all of your rearguards drive checks for a turn, doubling the power and critical of all of your front row, activating every other trigger effect, and giving all of your rearguards plus 10,000 power for the rest of the game. These are all ridiculously powerful effects that would be incredibly strong if they were printed on grade 3s with actual costs and restrictions. Restanding the Vanguard is like Dragonic Overlord's entire identity, and the Overtrigger just does it for free. Even if we reduce down the Overtrigger to a mere 10,000 power, a lot of these extra effects are just not okay. Let's use Dragon Empire as an example, just because that's the nation I'm thinking about the most right now. Nirvana can get a second attack in on top of like setting up your board and maybe getting some burn damage in. Bhavsagra can gain power and a crit with her arms cards, so you can swing in twice with criticals. D-Dote, you just get 3 Vanguard attacks. And Tamayura isn't once per turn, so you can just pay cost a second time and get more rearguard attacks. Keter Sanctuary has a rearguard that can gain drive checks, but you have to counterblast 2 and rest at least 3 rearguards if you don't want to discard a bunch. Meanwhile, the Overtrigger does the exact same thing for free. Over in Dark States, you have Unrivaled Bruce and Greedon that can restand themselves that can benefit from the 10k and a crit. And while Borrow Magnus can do that on his own, you have to set up 10 cards in Soul for it first. And we can just kind of keep going on and on like this. The Brantgate Overtrigger can just allow for instant OTKs with the double power and crit. Stoicheia, the Overtrigger is like kind of bad, but getting every trigger effect is still something you kind of have to work up to, like say in OTT for example, if you wanted to stack all trigger types for some reason. And of course, the lyrical OT is just absolutely bonkers, like gift spam decks in Premium have to work for plus 10,000 power to the whole board. The benefits from these extra effects are so massive that sometimes it doesn't even matter that you have the 100 million power. I was playtesting against Atlas and Matt before BRO, and there were times where I checked the overtrigger early, and the 100 million doesn't really matter at that point, but having the continuous 10,000 power to all rear guards, I was playing Bermuda Triangle, meant that I just had so much more pressure for the rest of the game. So, yeah, just everything about the overtrigger is terrible, and can we please get rid of them already? Now, one concern I did have with banning the overtrigger the last time I made this video was that the overtrigger was part of the deck lineup in all of the D trial decks. It would really suck if you were a new player trying to get into the game and someone has to come over and tell you, hey, that one card that's in your trial deck, you can't play that anymore. However, the new trial decks that are being released for Will Dress do not have overtriggers as part of the main lineup. It is instead being put into an expansion pack for the TDs, which, if you're buying one of those expansion packs, there's value in the cards aside from the overtrigger, so who cares about that? So, come October, when these new TDs are released in English, my only real objection to the banning of overtriggers would become moot. That being said, it seems like Bushiroad is doubling down on the overtrigger despite all of the complaints about it, because they have so far not made any indication that they're going to be doing anything about the overtrigger, and they are also reprinting all of the overtriggers in upcoming sets. All that being said, here's hoping that, with all of the negativity after BRO and the upcoming BCS season, that Bushiroad will finally just swallow their pride and admit that these things are a problem. Pretty much every major voice in the community is coming out against overtriggers, and nobody wants to travel out to BCS just to have their run ended by this one stupid mistake. So, please, Bushiroad, just admit that you made a mistake and get rid of the overtrigger already. They were never a good design from the very beginning, and nobody wants them now. As always, thank you to our $10 patrons, Darren, Cole, Josh, and Jeremy. If you want to support our show, $5 gets you a whole ass bonus show, $10 gets you early access and a shout out. We have a promo code at night at 50cards.shop. We got merch, there's a link in the description, and if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can find Atlas at AtlasNovak, you can find Matt at Wiggums, 2Gs, 2Zs, you can find me at Plasma Eclipse, and you can find our show at Nexus at Night on Twitter or Instagram. Thank you for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.